There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer. Welcome to another edition of Warhammer Weekly for 4/22, April 22nd, 2015. Uh, Joining me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Paul Atreides. Say hi, Tom.
Good evening, friends.
Joining us also is Mr. William Page from the bright, sunny land of Hawaii. William, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We are happy to have you, sir. So this week we've got a lot of great topics in store for you. We're going to talk about some legions. So that should be very fun. The often controversial and most fun if you happen to be the person playing them, legion lists. But as usual, we'll start out the show with some news and rumors and things like that. So, Tom, why don't you kick us off here? What's our most recent crop of rumors that have surfaced up?
Yeah, so it looks like, according to the White Dwarf, we are not going to be seeing any fantasy. I mean, the big news for me this week was that there's no fantasy or skirmish hybrid or any of those things pre-ordered this Friday. So it looks like it is the Assassins board game, the 40K. So yeah, that's kind of disappointing. And like similarly, if there really were two red dates in May, that would suggest that probably the 9th is also not a fantasy release, which means that we're looking at either June or July. An individual on Warseer seemed fairly confident that it was July 11th, which interestingly lines up with like the beginning of summer break in the UK for kids. So
yeah, let me take a moment and talk about that Assassins release. So the level of secrecy out of Nottingham is amazing. Like, the U.S. government could do well to study the techniques of Games Workshop, because we keep information much less effectively than GW does. It wasn't really confirmed that Assassins was the release until Warhammer TV put out the teaser video. So literally they kept it from, like, being known for sure until their own media news release spoiled it. That is an amazing amount of secrecy in the games industry. Most of the time, we know stuff months in advance. I mean, William, what's your feeling on all this, on this level of secrecy, and how much they're able to lock this stuff down?
I just wonder if we just don't care that much. I mean, I feel like if we really want to know, we can find out. I don't understand how the rumors even get out in the game industry. So I don't know why some games release their stuff like more easily than others. But I figured if somebody really cared, we could find out. Otherwise, I think we're just a bunch of fanboys waiting for Games Workshops to tell us things.
I mean, you really think that's the case? It's a question of caring? I mean, I don't know. I see a lot of people on the forums that seem like they care a lot. You just think they act like they care a lot, but they're not willing to actually, like, do the legwork.
I guess I feel like maybe video game industry, since they have such a larger audience and there's more people willing to spend more money to do things like get to know people within the company to try to get those leaks, that's why you get leaks from more prevalent, more well-known games, whereas we're really a niche like game. So I mean, we care, but does anybody care that much to make it part of the industry?
well, and like to go along with that, William, I think that it also makes sense. Like, if it is a niche industry, which it is. It's, they have a smaller team working on it and playtesting it, and so they can keep the info tight. Like, they can keep it from getting out just because there's only so many places that it could come from. It's not like they're having to send out like to hire animation shops, like exterior companies to do work for them. They're keeping it all in house, so they really can keep it sequestered.
Right. It's not Avengers where you're filming on location in South Africa and people can sneak up and take shots of the set with their cell phone or something, right? Yeah. I think that's probably a fair point. It is nonetheless, it is just a fascinating thing to me that it's able to stay on such lockdown. because when I look across other games, people are able to hunt up rumors and information months in advance, and oftentimes at the direction of the company that's sort of doing a long-term media campaign to probably on a 4 to 6 month time frame to build interest. With G-Dubs, it's like 2 weeks you maybe know. 1 week they confirm it, and then you better go buy the product the next Friday. They put a tight timetable on it. So it's a fascinating sort of ecosystem they've set up, I guess, for this is what I would call it.
It's clearly different PR approaches as well. That's clearly something that's going on here. They definitely have a different commitment to what makes a successful product launch. Different ideas in their mind compared to other miniature skirmish or other game companies.
Right.
Most of them skirmish games.
So Assassins will be on pre-order in 2 days. So if you want a new board game of 40K Assassins, well, congratulations! All your dreams have come true. It's the product that no one was asking for, as near as I can tell. But hey, whatever, that's fine. I'm not that tapped into the 40K community, so I guess maybe there's this huge underbelly of people who've been looking for a board game where I can play one of 4 amazing characters that go and knife each other in the dark. Could be. So there you go. So do we know what's on? The question is, there's still the rumored second red date. We've said that. And what surprised me about that is we still don't know what that is. I've seen discussion as recent as today as to what that people think that is. Could it be... I know that they spoiled in the White Dwarf. They have a little hidden message for what the next release is, and the message was something huge will fall on you.
A giant.
Sure. Or that. So there was rumors. Could it be an epic relaunch with the Titans and plastic epic? There's still talk of the Horus Heresy thing, which is the plastic Horus Heresy, which is coming out at some point in time. Either way, nothing is leaning fantasy. I'll say that much.
What if there is no fantasy? What if there's nothing here?
How amazing would that be? If they just drop the line and then we go to log on to the website and it's just not there anymore.
I was just thinking, what if there is no releases this year? Maybe we got end times and we're going to deal with that for 1 more year in stasis.
I think that would be insane. I think that would be legitimately insane. I also think it's just not they would be a great break from their recent strategy, right? I mean, if you look back over the last, let's say, 2 years, they've really actually given fantasy quite a bit of attention between sort of the fairly regular Army book releases and then certainly in end times. And I think that they are acting like a company that wants to build a product line, not diminish it. And not making any products for it for 9 months would do that. But I would buy the July date. It just makes me... That would also line up with post Throne of Skulls tournament, right? Which is their probably what they see as their final big send-off for 8th edition tournament, which is in June. So, all right. So there you go. Anything else there hitting the radar?
Yeah. 2 things. There was some discussion about, now this is lore related, again, take this for what it's worth, but there's been a discussion, or somebody dropped some aspect of talking about the fact that, we had talked about this bubble world, and some of the discussion was it was described of what we're potentially looking at as more like Thor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So the travel between is more and the language that was actually used was the roots of the world tree. So the world tree we know is consumed, that was the thing. But the idea was that the roots of the world tree, which were introduced in Cain, in fact, in the End Times book, still connect pieces of the world that seem to preserve into this next reality or whatnot. And so they're whatever these bubbles are, they may be holdovers from the prior world, and they're connected by the world root, which are these portal movement between these places. I don't know how I don't know how legitimate that is, but that was a discussion from someone who had exposure to some of the material, supposedly.
Well, it could always be a metaphorical tree, much like it is in Thor, right? Like, if you look at when Thor shows the image, it's a big tree, but, like, obviously he doesn't get to Earth by a big tree in reality. That's just sort of a metaphorical image for the connection of the planes, right? So in the same way, the tree itself, yeah, there was an Oak of Ages or a World Tree or whatever that the elves were using to jump all over the world, and they used to escape Ulthuan and Cain. But there's no reason that could just be the physical manifestation of the greater thing, right? And that greater thing could have survived. So that's always possible.
So, yeah, I mean, again, not a lot, but just kind of a little bit here and a little bit there. The other piece of information that some people may be interested in that's tangentially related to fantasy is the Total War Warhammer released their trailer this week for the video game like adaptation for Warhammer. What was fascinating to me about the news release was that they have actually contracted or they've actually licensed the IP for 3 releases in the Total War series. And so this is not a short-term thing that they seem to be doing. And if I were to guess, probably one of those 3 releases that we will end up seeing these expansions on this Total War Warhammer is likely to be End Times. Because in the trailer, Karl Franz is whooping some butt. And so I anticipate that actually we're probably not going to be seeing the end of Warhammer as we know it in some way, shape, or form, whatever that looks like. The second release could be End Times. The third could be post-End Times. Who knows?
Yep. Again, and that's the actions of a company that wants to build out one of their products, right? You start getting it out into other forms of media, and certainly the history of Games Workshop with digital media and games has been, shall we say, a rocky love affair, to put it mildly. But I think that it's hopeful. I mean, the trailer shows you absolutely nothing.
No.
If you like cinematic gameplay, if you like cinematic trailers that have zot to do with gameplay, then this is the trailer for you. Clearly they dropped a pretty penny on that trailer because that looks like a real person. Like, way to go, animation. They brought in like the Terminator 2/Jurassic Park team in on this one to really knock it out of the park for a 3-minute game trailer.
My favorite game trailer is that one with the warrior priest in the woods being ambushed by the Chaos Warriors and the Bloodthirsters. I love that trailer. I hated that game, but I love that trailer.
Are you talking about War now, right? The trailer for War, where the Chaos Warrior and the Sigmarite priest get into that the mano a mano combat at the end of it, or are you talking about for Total War?
I think he's talking about something else.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I will say that with the War trailer, which was a similar thing, it had the Sigmarites fighting the Chaos people in the woods. If you remember that trailer for War, Warhammer Age of Reckoning, and that one always drove me up a wall and back down the other side because the Chaos Warrior is winning and beating the Sigmarite priest, and then he gets like his hammer lights a flame with the power of Sigmar, his eyes glow with fire, and he like strikes the Chaos Warrior, and the Chaos Warrior just catches the hammer, knees him in the nards, and then kills him. I'm like, wow, way to go, power of Sigmar. What'd you do? Fat nothing. Like that. I'm disgusted by that trailer.
My favorite was the extended version of that trailer where they actually got into Altdorf, and it has like
Shadow Warrior murder like half the enemy army.
Yeah, the Shadow Warrior. In the stare down between the Shadow Warrior and the Sorceress before Chaos pulled back out.
Yes.
It was a fantastic trailer. So
yeah. All right. Well, enough of that. The final rumor that I heard that I'll add to this was, in listening to some podcasts, I heard a nice rumor of the idea, more of a confirmation thing of the idea of army construction under 9th edition. There's been the idea of the collapsing of like troops of not having so many entries in the individual books. And so one of the ideas that came up, the example that they gave, was instead of having elf spearmen and elf bow archers and Lothern Sea Guard and swordmasters and white lions, whatever, instead you just have like elf, and elf has a standard profile. that just has some options you buy down below. Different weapon options, maybe like options to buy into certain special rules, which again is not beyond the pale. We don't think of it, but it doesn't happen much in 8th edition, but it happens some. Here's an easy example. Your Necropolis Knights can buy Entomb Beneath the Sands for 5 points apiece. Or if you want to go back farther, your Bretonnian Archers can buy their little flaming, braziers to suddenly gain flaming attacks. So it's not like the idea of purchasing special abilities is an unknown quantity. That happens. And so the idea would be that you would basically be sort of doing a build your own elf unit or something like that. Instead of needing 5 different army book entries, you would just have one, and then the points get adjusted accordingly. That's interesting to me. It tells me that if you went that direction, you're going to be talking about some kind of very different army construction rules, right? Because you're sort of wrapping up what could easily be core and what we think of now as core and special and maybe even rare into one sort of selection type.
Right. Which you could also do, by the way, just by saying, like, so right now in kind of the mechanics, the game mechanics, they have things like you may purchase one ability from the following list. Type of things where they're kind of mutually exclusive choices. And by doing that, that could push you, like, if they wanted to maintain the types, like special, rare, and all that, they could do that by saying, by selecting this unit now counts as a rare choice or a special choice or whatnot. Like if they wanted to maintain it, those priors. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change the build. So
that's a good point. That is a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, if you choose for this unit to be skirmishing and stubborn or something, then they count as a special choice instead. Like whatever, I don't know.
If you choose for your high elves to have White Lion pelt,
yeah,
it becomes a special unit.
Stubborn in the woods, right, Tom?
I don't want to talk about it.
Tom learned an important lesson this last weekend about how skirmishers are stubborn in woods. And when his dragon princes ran afoul of some skinks in the woods that they then proceeded to not kill for 6 turns.
I don't want to talk about it.
All right, so let's move on to some hobby time. All right, so William, you are the guest. So as usual, you have first bite at the apple. So what's on your desk, man? What have you been working on?
I work on a lot of different things all at the same time. I'm painting up some Chaos Warriors for the Pyre Legion. I still have the wings to do for my Bloodthirster. I'm pinning up Russians for Flames of War. I play Inquisitor, some sort of Inquisitor RPG game that always escapes me. I forget the name, but I'm painting up models for my friends doing that. And then I don't play 40K, but I love those Stormtrooper models, and so I have some of those I'm painting too.
Nice. No, I fully support painting. Like, you don't need to have to play the thing to want to paint the model. There are some awesome models out there, and some of them are worthy of just spending some time on. Very cool. What are you with the Bloodthirster? Are you doing it? You said you still have to do the wings. Now, are you sub-assembling it, or is this or is it just you haven't done the wings yet? They're attached to the guy.
Oh, I always everything I do, I always paint it first and then glue it together. It takes a long time, but I'm very OCD, and so I have to have it done a certain way.
Gotcha. Now, do you stay on the sprue, or do you sub-assembly?
Oh, I don't start on the sprue. I do the other thing.
Okay, got it. So you are putting somewhat together. You're just making sure you can always have free access to all parts of the model.
Yeah, like I'll put the body together. Like I'll paint the body. Like for the Chaos Warriors, I'll paint the body, and then I'll take off the arms from the sprue, and then I'll paint the arms, and then I'll glue the arms and the body together, and then the head, and then I'll put it on the base.
Gotcha. Well, very nice. Yeah, that's definitely a lot on your desk. You got a lot to be working on. I'll be excited to see that Bloodthirster show up in a battle report and avenge his previous performance. I'm sure Korn will be much more pleased once he's all there. All right, Tommy, what's on your desk, sir?
I've had a lot of work on my desk, so I've been working on. So I have not. I was out of town last week, as you saw by not being on the show. So I'm still kind of tinkering around with those Savage Orc proxies, kind of making progress one step at a time. This week I took a detour from that briefly with the small time that I did have, and I spruced. I I added some static, or it's like some bushes, static grass stuff to my Doom Diver before submitting him to our local GW shop for they're having a conversion contest that Vince and I have submitted models for, and so yeah, so we'll see. So we'll see what happens with my Doom Diver model. So yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. I mean, do they have a second place trophy?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, and yeah, so for me, for the first time in a long time, I'm not going to answer Bretonians is what's on my desk. I did just finish a couple things. I finished that Standard Bearer, which I was very happy with. He was a lot of freehand and stuff like that, so I thought he came out well. But I'm actually working on our bi-weekly challenge piece for Paul K. and my show, and our challenge this week is blood and gore, painting blood and gore on a model. So obviously Bretonian's not the right choice for that, unless I'm doing a Moussalon night or something. But it's a tricky proposition for me. I don't know how both of you feel about it. I hate painting blood and gore on models because I always feel like I'm ruining them. Like, it's just, you spend a lot of time and effort to craft this fig, and then it's like, now let's mess it up. Now if you do it right, it can look appropriate to the piece, but it's easy to screw it up. But I'm doing my Slaneshi Demon Princess, which is a converted Bloodbrack Medusa with some other pieces there. So she'll be up. She's coming along. And obviously, I thought if I'm going to do blood and gore, I might as well do something with blood in the name. And so the Bloodbrack Medusa, who actually has little mottled blood on her, seemed like a fair choice. All right. As always, out there, you should tell us what's on your desk and what you're working on, and leave it below. And with your pictures and what you do, you can send them to us. We're happy to show them on the show. Or, as always, you should, if you're not already, you should join the PMP, Painters Motivating Painters. It's a Google Plus community, and if you search it out, PMP, Painters Motivating Painters, you can request to join. It's a private community where we all share tips and tricks and encourage each other, and even offer some advice and occasionally some constructive criticism. Always constructive. Very serious about that. No meanie heads in the PMP. We don't stand for that around here. No. All right. So that's what's on our desk. Let's move on to our main segment this week, which is the Proud Nail. So the Proud Nail we've done a couple times before on the show, and the idea of the thing is, it's carpentry term. The Proud Nail is a Proud Nail is something that sticks out of the board, and when you run your hand across it, it catches your hand. It prevents the piece from being finished, from being perfect. And in gaming, the Proud Nail is any kind of tiny thing, or a small rules thing, or something like that just gets under your skin and bothers you. And I thought we would talk today about the Legions list from the point of view of that. Because everybody here, actually, we all play a Legions list. We all play a different Legions list. William, you play, obviously you mentioned the Fire Legion, and that's the Chaos Legion, right?
Yes.
And Tom is a big fan of the Elven Host. It's been months since I've seen an elf that does not both have martial and murderous prowess. And I myself play the Undead Legions, or as they should be known, the Fair Legion, because they're the ones that don't cheat. Maybe tipping my hand there. All right, so I thought first we'd start by saying, like, why do we each play the Legion? What draws us to it? Because we could just be playing there's armies underneath there. We could just be sticking to one of the armies. What is it that makes us want to play the Legion? The rules, the addition of figs, just the idea of the thing, whatever. So, William, again, you're the guest. Why don't you start us off there, sir? What made you want to do the Fire Legion?
Well, first off, I want to say that the Elven Host is disgusting, and anybody who plays that is disgusting.
I accept.
I'm an elf player.
Anyone.
I accept.
To get all those rules for free is just ridiculous. But anyways, I'm just kidding too. I play Chaos. I started off playing Chaos Warriors just pure before that book came out, just because I wanted to kind of re-envision a 40k Chaos Warriors army I used to play when I was playing 40k, called the Fire Legion, that I had ripped off from, I think, the 3rd edition Chaos book. And so when End Times came out, when I build armies, I kind of build them very themed, I guess. Like my dark elves are very Cainite focused, and they just it's a coincidence that they're the most awesome rules army also, but that's besides the point. But anyways, the
Sure.
the Chaos Army was marked completely Tzeentch. And so I thought when Antis came out, that'd be a great way to solidify that theme by just including some Tzeentch units into it. And that's mainly why I do what I do. An added benefit is it allows it puts a little bit more dimension on the army. It allows there to be some shooting from the flamers, some better movement from the screamers. I mean, I'm not bringing like the hardest of the hard things. I'm just bringing things that help theme that army.
Yeah, you know, I will say from my perspective, I think the Chaos Legion's pretty cool. You know, I have a demon army. I would never play the Chaos. Like, if there's any sign of that the Chaos Legion is kind of more in the right place, I would never go Chaos Legion with my demons, because the idea of making them unstable and then still being my frontline troops is no, we're not doing that. That's not happening. And like, I don't own a Beastman army or a Warriors of Chaos army, other than a few, you know, errant pieces here and there. And I don't have an urge to suddenly buy a bunch of, you know, Chaos Warriors or something. So I think that it's funny because the Chaos Legion, it really helped the Beastmen, right, which we're certainly in need of it. It really didn't do anything for the demons because they go unstable. And I mean, it's not like people are playing with Chaos Ascendant rules under most circumstances, unless you're just doing a friendly game to see how it works. And the Warriors of Chaos probably came out the best because they do get to dip a little now their toes into other pools and get at some other options. But to be fair, they were already a fantastic army, so whatever. I mean, they, you know, I'm not sure it'd be pretty gross to start, other than maybe like the 3-up Doom Bull, who's now running around in every Chaos Legion army just destroying entire units. I'm not sure that there's really much I would call a great paradigm shift for them. That 3-up Doom Bull, though, is pretty sexy. All right, so very good. So that's why you're playing it. All right, we'll go around the horn on why we're playing it, and then we'll come back to what we think are the challenges with it. So Tom, why Elven Host?
Other than how utterly filthy it is. No. I mean, I was High Elves obviously before the Elven Hosts were even a thing.
Right.
But the biggest draw for me in making that list. And it dawned on me, like, it actually occurred to me. I was in the process of crafting a High Elven list. I was like, oh, I'm going to back off, give people a break, just play High Elves. But what drew me back in, honestly, were the special characters. I wanted to run Caradhran, Incarnate of Fire. Like, I wanted to give him a spin. And unlike the units for the other hosts, like the other books, like the Blight Kings and stuff like that, like, none of the new Elven characters can actually be ran in any normal armies. They demand the new host armies. So you can't run any of the Elarials. Like, you can't run Elarial Incarnate of Life. You can't run the Tyrion. Like, you can't run the other ones without actually being in the host army. And so, for me, that's what pulls me into the Elven Host, is that I want, like, I really like building around kind of these weird, neat characters and stuff like that. And so what ends up happening is that I end up getting pulled into the host. And it's like, well, as long as I'm here, let's throw some Dark Riders in and some Silver Helms. And then the other half of it for me is that, like, it was a great, like, I wanted Dark Elves, but I was like, I have High Elves, and, like, because, again, like, so much of why I even started High Elves was the aesthetic was nostalgic for me of playing Warhammer Online. And so I was, like, totally in on High Elves, and I really enjoyed Dark Elves from when I was playing War. But the problem I ran into was that I was like, I'm not going to start a Dark Elf army because I already have a High Elf army. They're too similar. But as soon as I got the ability to actually run them together, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll throw some Dark Elves onto my shelf, and then it kind of spiraled out of control. So that's what drew me into running Elven Host, and yeah.
So what you're telling me is that Elven Host for you is like heroin. You got like a little taste, and then you were like just shooting it all day long. You couldn't stop yourself, right?
Sure. I'll go with that metaphor.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Okay. So Caleb Goodson just commented that Elf Legion, an excuse to field all the awesome monsters all at once. Yeah, he's done that list. It's pretty
I
awesome.
have, and it was amazing.
Yeah. So yeah. So then myself, why am I playing Undead Legions? The answer here is very simple. I love Tomb Kings. I've played them since the original book of Tomb Kings came out in 2004 or whatever. And I still own that book, and I went back and read it recently, and I was like, I don't know how I won with this army ever. And then I realized, oh yeah, I never did. Like, I lost every time with that army. So there you go. That's how I did it. Problem solved. They were terrible then. They are not great now. They're so cripplingly underpowered. And even playing them now under the new book, I kind of got tired of getting my teeth kicked in by a lot of other armies. And so then the Undead Legion came out, and really just the ability to give me not crumble on Hierophant Death and March alone was like, oh, hey, now I get to play this game and actually like use the very baseline rules that most other armies get automatically. You know, I rarely have anything in the way of BC in my armies. I'm almost always just stapling the name over there to get access to those rules. That being said, you can see a little Coven Throne there. And, I mean, there's a couple other BC things I'll occasionally take in, some hex rates or something. But I just love it because it makes my Tomb Kings fun again. And it gave me a lot more options. And I think much like what Tom said, yes, it was also an excuse to buy more crap. Which is never a bad thing. Who doesn't like to buy crap? I mean, that's why we're playing this game, isn't it? I mean, that's why I thought that's why we were getting into Warhammer. So we could buy crap. That's half the fun. All right. So now let's talk about the problems with the hosts, okay? And so though we could easily talk about our own hosts, you know, it's hard to look at yourself and see the reflection truly. So instead, I want to start with, what do you think the problem is with your own host? And then if you have a thought about the other two, and if they have the same problems or not. So William, why don't you give us a start? What do you think are some problems with the Chaos Legion? What do you think is hurting the perception of Chaos Legion to people? And do you think there's any proud nails within the army list?
Well, I've been thinking about this for a second, and I think it goes back to something bigger than just the Legions itself. I think it's the game. So I don't think there's a lot of people out there who know the game very well that would say that the game's balanced. The points are almost arbitrary for all these units, and please excuse any planes that go over my head. So the game is unbalanced. I think that's perfectly fine, because a balanced game is really boring. 5th edition 40K was as close to balanced as any Games Workshop game I feel like has gotten, and that was very boring to me, because everybody was pretty much playing the exact same thing, no matter what they were, what army they had. And so when you have a game that's unbalanced, the thing that's great about it is the amount of choices you have. I think that's what makes a game great. And so I think what the rub is, though, when you have a situation like that, is that you have SKU lists that enter into the game. Because you give people all these sorts of choices. I'm very sorry.
Never mind.
But you have all these sorts of choices, and so that allows for SKU lists. It's just a part of having an unbalanced game system. And so when people bring SKU lists against people who don't have SKU lists, you have a situation where they can't really, maybe they can't interact in all facets of the game, or because how SKU lists work, that they front load a certain aspect of the game, there's not much a balanced list can do against it, that they feel like they're not really given a chance to play during the game. Like maybe somebody has like unkillable stuff, and so they're rolling all these dice and it's not amounting to anything because it's not how it's going to happen. And so the easy solution to that is just tell people to play better. And when people say to play better, what they mean is make a list that counters my list, rather than take your army and try to beat my SKU list with it. Because the reality is a SKU list works because you can't do anything about it, because it's unbalanced to the extreme. And so to bring that back into our Legion armies, specifically my Legion armies, it's just an opportunity, though it gives you a lot of choices, just to create a SKU list. And I think that's what rubs people the wrong way, is the idea that you can make these skew lists, that you can bring a Doom Bull who was already very killy, then take away his weakness, which is maybe not having a very good armor save, or invulnerable save in this case, and then give that to him and make it to where there's not much you can do about it unless you change the way you play. So while the game gives you lots of choices, when a person brings a skew list, the person who's playing against the skew list feels like they don't have as many choices. And I think that's what ends up being the wrong thing. Do I think that's a problem overall? No. I think that's what makes the game great. I do see that there is an issue with it. I think the solution is that people who want to bring skew lists need to recognize what the game is for what it is, that they're bringing a rock to a game of paper, rock, scissors, and maybe tell their opponent, hey, I'm going to bring this rock. I know that you usually play with scissors, but how about this time you bring the paper, and I try to see if I can beat the paper.
I like that. That's a good explanation. Now, do you think that the Chaos Legion is more susceptible to this sort of skew or this sort of behavior than the other two?
I think that, yeah, I think it is. I think Chaos is more susceptible because you can bring more. You can bring an all-flying list. You can bring a bunch of characters that are just very hard to deal with. I mean, unbreakable Lord characters are something that is very difficult for people to deal with. Sometimes, I was thinking about this yesterday, you can bring a lot of really hard characters and a lot of armies, but the weakness will always be that they may not be able to beat your combat resolution and will break. When you give a Lord the unbreakable rule, then that kind of takes away their only weakness. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sure, Chaos, the Warriors of Chaos are very famous for the rugby team skew, right? Where, like, the guy and the chariots, the guy and his 12 buddies and the chariots they rode to the battle on are all that shows up. Like, the other side is setting up an army and dropping blocks, and this guy's got 7 figs on the table. It's like, what am I fighting here?
But I would say that all the Legion rules have that issue. Like, I think Undead, I think the issue is the magic phase. Maybe Undead magic is a little too much for your normal every game list to deal with, because they're just bringing a balanced list versus your rock, and so maybe that's what rubs them the wrong way. I don't think it's fair to say that any list can be any list in fantasy, because the game isn't balanced, and I feel like people like to talk out both ends. Like, they want to say one thing about the game to be true, and then talk about the other game in another aspect to be true, and don't realize those are conflicting, and they can't both exist at the same time. So just
you can't have a lot of units with a lot of special rules and a lot of choices and a lot of different. You can't have everybody have 6 viable armies and all this stuff, or builds or whatever, and 15 different armies, each with 6 builds and special rules and characters, and then have a perfectly balanced game. That's just not a world that's going to happen, right? Where you allow that much choice, you're inviting there to be winners and losers. Yeah,
at some point the game will be a game of paper, rock, scissors, and that's still a skill. You can still say that's a skillful game, but when you go to a tournament in that type of atmosphere, you got to recognize that maybe you're going to have the rock to the 5 guys scissors, and that's fine. You did a good job of understanding the meta, and you brought the rock. So yeah, I don't know. I think the only game system that recognizes that is War Machine, which lets you bring multiple lists, because then you can change it up. Otherwise, you're just being like, before you come to the tournament, you're saying, okay, this tournament I'm going to play paper, rock, scissors, and I'm just going to bring scissors, and you're just going to use scissors all the way through the tournament. Whereas War Machine recognizes the game for what it is and says, hey, we're going to give you an option to bring 2 choices.
Yeah. I think it's easier for them because you're putting 20 models on the table, right? And that's, a different proposition than bringing 2 full armies. An idea that came up on the show maybe a month back that somebody had suggested, and I was shocked I never thought of it, or no one's ever done it, at least to my knowledge. So maybe there is a tournament out there, and if there is, I apologize for ignorance of it. But is the sideboard. If you think of, like, if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, obviously any tournament is going to have a sideboard to it, right? And in there, if you've got a 60-card deck, you've got a 15-card sideboard. So theoretically, at best, you can switch out a quarter of your deck for your sideboard, which actually amounts to, probably, more than half your playable cards, being that 22 of those are land, or 24 of those are land, or somewhere in that range. So I wonder, like, and the sideboard at 400 or 500 points, I think that could be an easy way to deal with that, because you really can shift the flavor and tone of an army if you move 500 points around. I think that could be an interesting way to go about it. So maybe instead of a whole separate list, you have a sideboard list that changes out 500 points for another construction or something like that. Here's my question. Is the Proud Nail in the Chaos Legion, and I've got full credit to Caleb for this one, is the Proud Nail in the Chaos Legion the Reign of Chaos table? The fact that suddenly, demons demons have problems with their magic phase, that you don't get a Dispel Scroll and these other things. It can be very expensive for them to get potent wizards and so on and so forth. So they have this Reign of Chaos table to kind of balance it out. But all of a sudden in the Legion army, now all the normal armies that still have full access to all magical toys just buy their way into a Reign of Chaos table. Like if you're Warriors and you just if you're playing a straight Warriors army, you erase the name and write in Chaos Legion, and then boom, a Reign of Chaos table happens. You suddenly get an extra thing for nothing. Is that a Proud Nail?
I mean, I guess. I mean, I've played about a dozen games with that, and it doesn't really impact the game very much. Like usually, it doesn't do anything, and sometimes, almost every game, I've rolled the bad results, and it's been really scary. Luckily, nothing's happened, but I've summoned demons. I've rolled the 12, and then I've rolled a 3, where I have to take a leadership test on one of my characters, and they might die.
Right.
So. And then the ones that are everything in between, sometimes they're not very consequential. So, I mean, I could see maybe in a one-off game that you're going to benefit from it greatly, and it's going to turn the tide of that game. But overall, it's not that big of an impact.
That is a controversial statement. If Lord Tremendous watches this, he is going to have some words for you, sir. Let me tell you what. I know he has strong feelings about that Reign of Chaos table.
Some people have bad luck.
I actually tend to agree with you. I don't think it's that impactful. Just from sitting on the other side of it, I know when I play my demons, I'm often just as afraid of it. It makes me dread the magic phase. Because I'm not like, what free effect am I going to get? I'm like, this is going to be the turn, right as I'm about to go into combat, that my ward save goes to 6 up and I get hammered. Right? Yeah. Like, that's how I feel.
One thing I would change about the rules is I wish all the marks were the same rule. Like that's annoying to me that the corn marks in the demons and the corn marks in the Chaos Warriors are different. I don't like that. Just make it all the same, especially if you're going to make a whole new book for everything.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just Slaanesh that made them do that differently, right? Because they couldn't use ITP for the demons since they already were, and they were like, well, we just got to do them all different now. Right. Tom, your turn. Elven hosts. What are the problems, and do you think those problems are unique to yourself? Do the other legions suffer from the same thing?
Well, I'm about to complain about something that you guys are going to be like, meh, meh, meh. Like I recognize that again. We've already kind of talked about how good the Elven host lists are.
Yes, we understand there's level setting. The Elven host combines the number 1 and number 2 army into an even more brutal army. We understand that's the level we're operating from, so go ahead.
This one, like, there's an illusion, like, so when, William, you had said earlier that the amount of choices you have make what make legions great. Like it's suddenly this plethora of kind of, unlike the other Legion lists, and I mean, like, vampires have this to a lesser degree, but that new list of choices, to a degree, is an illusion for elves. And what I mean by that is this. Okay, so I'm going to have core. Do I want spear elves? Okay. Which ones? They're all the same. Like, now that all the abilities have largely been collapsed, they're all largely the same. Wood elves, I can have wood spear elves, and that'll give me, and I'll lose out, I'll gain steadfast or stubborn, yeah. Or like, how about some elves with halberds or elves with great weapons? Like, you go through and there's really there's just small little tweaks between well, do I get a halberd with hatred and stubborn, or do I get a halberd with a ward save? And, like it's the amount of actual choices there are so small. It's literally like a small needle being moved with each of these choices, and so it's not really a different choice. You have to go into the very unique things that are the super crazy broken things to actually suddenly begin to mix things, like throwing Doomfires in with frost hearts and things like that. And then everybody's going to bitch about that as soon as you start doing that. And so, so one of my critiques is like it's just there's too much overlap. How about an elf lord on a dragon? Which army do I go? All of it just overlaps. And so that would be my biggest critique, is that I actually don't gain a lot unless I go into this very unique, very powerful things within each army to add diversity to my Legion list.
I will say I honestly do think that is an interesting point, because when you look at the Chaos Legion, Beastmen are very different than Warriors of Chaos are very different than Demons, right? Like in the just what the troops are. When I'm choosing, a Chaos Warrior is not the same thing as a Bloodletter, is not the same thing as a Gore, right? These are different choices that are used in different ways, completely different capabilities all throughout. But, it's not that there's no difference, it's that an Elven Spearman is an Elven Spearman is an Elven Spearman across all three armies for the most part. Now, I think you're right that what you does also to some degree allow you to do is harvest the best of the broken out of those books, and that is where I think people start to then get butthurt about it, right?
And that's the backside of this. And so here's the reality: is that I don't actually have a choice when I want to do something like fast cap, because I can choose something that's a subpar option, or I can choose Dark Riders.
Because there's such a direct comparison, you say you feel bad if you take.
Yeah, I can pay 5 more points and get a 4-up armor fast cap with repeaters for 5 more points than my High Elven Reavers. There's just you're not even playing in the same. The problem is that they're too similar, and generally there's a clear winner amongst those similarities. And so if I want to run Spearmen, I'm going to run Eternal Guard. If I want to run Fast Cap, I'm going to run Dark Riders. And so what ends up happening is that there aren't choices, because there is a mathematically superior choice amongst those 3 options normally. And that's what, if I'm going to run it, that's what generally, I ought to probably run from a composition standpoint. And so there don't end up being choices, because there are winners and losers in this comparison.
Tom, do you hear that? That is the sound of 1,000 people on the internet just hating you so hard right now. Like the haterade, the bucket of haterade that is going to get dumped on you for that. No, that's fine. I think that's a fair point. And would you say that is something unique to the Elven list?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. That is a unique hang-up in the Elven list that the other Legions lists don't necessarily. Vampire counts get it to some degree, because they have to choose between, do I run Tomb Guard or do I run Grave Guard? Well, guess what? They're about
sure, it's going to be Grave Guard every time.
Right.
But at the same time, there are a lot of differences. Just in the way the troops, Vampire counts having Ethereals and Tomb Kings having shooting and all that kind of stuff. There's still a fair amount of difference. I don't often feel duplicitous between the 2 armies.
Sure. Okay, and that's fair. But what I will say is, that is my main complaint. One other small, it's hard for me to even talk about this, because the reality is that when I'm talking about Elven Legions list, I think it's the epitome of the Legion list problem, in that there's just no reason not to, and it's all upside.
Right. You pay nothing and get everything.
Yeah, you pay nothing, you get everything, and you always get the superior choices. You're not being forced to have demonic instability. You're not being forced to. You're not these things aren't being forced upon you by bringing an army in. Right. With the Elven Legion list, it's all upside. And there's all just bonus abilities across the board. I only lose a handful of options by going to the Legion lists.
So you would think taxes on your Elven host. There's some sort of tax.
Yeah, there needs to be a tax, is what I would say. To bring it into balance, because there's literally no negatives for bringing it in, other than losing a handful of units or a couple named heroes, a couple special abilities. There are some small rules niggles that are kind of a problem. So for example, the way that the Bloodrack Shrine has been written, it literally damages even a Legion list, because it's only Dark Elf models within the radius. So you can't actually run a Bloodrack Shrine unless you're predominantly running Dark Elves because you're going to debuff your own leadership because of the way it's been written.
Because it actually says models from the Dark Elf army.
Yep. And so there are a couple small things like that here and there that again, these are super small things. But
you know what I hate is that I can just take my Dark Elf army and just give them martial prowess. I think that's dumb. I think I should be forced to have a high elf token unit in my army. That's why that's why I don't like Elven Host. I haven't really thought about how broken it can be. It's just I don't like the idea of that. I just be like, oh, I'm going to get martial prowess. Because my friends who I play against already feel like my Dark Elves are overpowered because I'm rerolling everything. Now I tell them for the same amount of points I reroll everything like before, and I get to fight an extra rank. Yep. I mean, that's why I've never ran it.
Yeah, and like with that, I would say that it was a missed opportunity for GW because they could have turned up the Elven squabbling. Okay, that's the other half of this host. Like High Elves already were had kind of this built-in hierarchy issue stuff. And now you're throwing together 3 different sub-races of elves, particularly with Dark Elves in that mix. They could have played in that space of animosity or something like that with the Elven lists to give them some downside for getting all of this upside, and they didn't. And I think that was a missed opportunity for GW.
Like an Elven animosity?
Yeah, I honestly think that some type of I'm not taking orders from that person or something. Something to kind of baked in the tension that is implicit in those races. Yeah. The unwillingness to engage, maybe it's not willing to charge in if there's another enemy that's engaged, a Dark Elf unit is engaged with the enemy. The High Elf unit has to make a leadership check to even charge the same enemy because they don't care if they get wiped out.
Back in the day, there was a point in time where High Elves had to determine who the general of their army was randomly.
Yeah.
Because of political infighting. Right, and that could something like that with maybe more teeth could be what it is. You didn't want that level 1 wizard to be your general, but he played some back alley politics, and now you got that guy. He's the one broadcasting his leadership aid around.
Yeah, and so I don't want to go on this too long, but yes, that's kind of my general critique. I think that the people don't like Legion lists because in general, I think there's 2 reasons. One, they're too good, and I think that's epitomized in the Elven Host list. It's all upside, no downside. I think the other half of it is that not everybody gets to play.
Yeah, sure.
There are 8 armies that have host lists. Yeah, 8 armies have host lists. There are 16 armies that people can field, and so not everybody gets to play.
Yep. So. For me, I'll do Undead quickly here. I'll say that. I think Undead probably is the least controversial of all of the Legions list, just because I think there are a few people who begrudge Tomb Kings getting a little hand up. If you're running a primarily Tomb Kings force, I think it's slightly more controversial on the VC side, as they were at least a decent army before, and they're certainly mid tier. And I think if I have any problem with it, it's that VC based Undead Legions armies really just means I might have taken some skeletal archers. Either it's 2 things. Either I just took some skeletal archers and a casket of souls, right? Because who doesn't want free dice? So I'm harvesting the only 2 decent things in the Tomb King's army and calling it a day. And I'm using it to fuel my already ridiculous magic phase that VC can generate, right? Of just spamming out invocation or whatever else happens to be the case everywhere. So if you literally to the point where if you don't kill the things around me in 1 turn, if that terror guy still has 1 wound left, it's irrelevant. He's going to be back at 6 by the time I'm done with my magic phase next turn, right? So it's dead or nothing. It becomes the result of that, and they can do that through a Hydro Titan, a Hydro Titan, a Casket of Souls, and call it a day. Boom! Now my guy's got all this juice. And one of the other problem is I don't think it actually let the Tomb Kings play that much different. It got rid of their good rules, or sorry, their bad rules of the cripplingly bad rules. But in the end, I think you primarily still play mostly the same way with Tomb Kings. That is to say, your best bet is probably to have some kind of ranged focus caster wall that forces them to come to you in some degree, and you try to dominate the match phase and shooting, and then hope you wither them down enough to actually then take over. It's not that Tomb Kings can't go get people now. They actually can do that. because they can march. I mean, before at 4 inches a turn, forget about it. It's off the table. You're never getting across the table before you're dead, unless they have no shooting whatsoever. In which case, why did you even move at all? It was irrelevant. With 10 archers, you outranged powered them, right? But I think primarily the way they still want to play is pretty much the same thing. I think the other proud nail is that Tomb Kings or the Undead Legions get associated with the lore of undead, right? And because they are the ones who can capitalize on that the most. Any army can take it, and certainly I've seen some wackiness with like goblin shamans, little goblins with lore of undeath and stuff. But really, it's like as the recent Masters showed, which didn't do anything to improve people's attitude towards the lore of undeath, and which is really crap because the guy wasn't just sitting there throwing out chaff. He was using it very intelligently. If you go listen to like I think Shadows in the North had him on, and if you go listen to that, like he was playing with it very intelligently, and the way he used it was very calculated, very smart. But lore of undeath in general is just a very defeating thing for your enemy. You make units, if you get even a couple of them off, then the enemy has to waste time killing stuff or dying to stuff that's worth no victory points whatsoever. And I think Undead Legions is in the primary place to capitalize on that because they already have undead themselves, so they have the best tools to work with and modify new undead they summon. And in general, it's a really negative thing, and I think people, even though they are separate, they're tied tightly together. It makes people be like, ugh, you know, that lore of undeath, it leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. And so I think that's probably the big proud nail sticking out of Undead Legions, is that it got associated with that lore, which I think is mostly negative. And obviously, I think in that case, that is unique to them. I don't know that there's many powerful skews. There's a couple, but taking Lore of Undeath out of it, I don't know that there's many super powerful skews that Undead Legions enabled that weren't around before, right? Like, I mean, again, Nagash is a weird thing. He himself is his own problem, right? Which is probably the other big issue with Undead Legions is that Nagash exists. And we didn't touch on like the special characters relevant to these, but Nagash was the biggest problem until all the Elven special characters rolled in, and like 72 of them showed up, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go! Woo! Unkillable! That's me, buddy." I mean, you know, so Malekith and Imrik and every other Alariel and Karn of Life and every other garbage Elven special character that was hot off the presses because they couldn't stop absorbing winds of magic over there on Wolf 1. You know, I'm not sure that Chaos really made out the same way in that one. Like, I get, like, Scar, Blood Guy, and the Spume, Gutrot Spume. Like, is anybody writing home about these morons? I mean,
you got Glodkin. Like, they got, like, Nurgle got a bunch of love.
Yeah, the Glotkin, sure. But, I mean, is anybody really that impressed by the Glotkin? I don't hear the controversy about Glotkin. I hear about Nagash because he summons entire armies, or about Malekith because he's unkillable, right? And he is very destructive and cheats and moves people around the board, and he's just like, he's Hanky Fest 2015.
It is
right?
really it's kind of ironic that now that we see all three, that the Undeads is very tame compared to the other two, but there was such an uproar when Undead came out compared to the Elven host. I don't remember people getting that freaked out about the Elven host.
It was the magic rules. The magic rules are what people were losing their mind about.
Right. Everybody was too busy worrying that Kane Magic was going to become, you know, the 9th edition standard that we all Malekith snuck in under the radar, and it's only now, like when I watched Adam Sinclair's battle reports, where from his most recent tournament he went to in England. You know, I mean, he talked about how, you know, half the armies there, or like 60-70% of the armies there, had either Nagash or Malekith. Right.
Makes total sense.
And yeah, so it's like, it's one of those things where it becomes very difficult to. Nagash is a spoiler on his own, but taking him out, I don't know that there's like a lot of skew lists the Undead Legions can suddenly generate they couldn't do before. Like VC could always run screen skew, right, and stuff like that. They could always do these big Black Knight buses with a you know, Blender Lord and other baby vamps at the head and a White King and all that kind of crap. None of that's getting added to by the brutality of Tomb Kings. You know, I don't think anybody's writing home about that brutal Tomb Guard unit that's like suddenly weapon skill 6 because of my will be done and guy has hatred because of a Necrotech. Like, yeah, that's neat. Way to go on that sweet Graveguard unit. Okay? You know, like, it's an infantry block. Infantry blocks are infantry blocks. They're never like, yeah, whatever. They're not the thing that you're like, oh, I can't stop that, unless it's like the Chaos Legion block out of like Once Bitten's recent report, or maybe that was just straight Warriors. I don't even know. I don't remember now. Where 2,200 points of a 2,500 point army was in one block. Did you see that report?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the Death Star to end all Death Stars. That might be a bit much. But again, I think he could have done that. Might have been just straight Warriors, and so again, that horrible skew is possible, even sans Chaos Legion. All right. Well, there we go. I feel like that was we covered that pretty well. If you've got some thoughts on the legions or some proud nails you want to cover, you know, put your comments below. Tell us about it. What makes you angry about the legions list? Do you like them? Do you hate them? If you hate them, why do you hate them? If you love them, why do you love them? But with that, I think we come to the time is 9 o'clock, and we come to the end of our show. William, Tom, any final thoughts?
I love this show. This is great.
Well, thank you. We loved having you on, buddy, and you are welcome back anytime.
Cool.
The next time we're going to film live from your place, so we're all going to fly out to Hawaii to do it. I think that's the.
You're welcome over here.
Tom, any closing thoughts?
No. You guys are going to bitch about me, and I'm okay with that. So, can't wait to talk to you in the comments.
There you go. William, I really am coming out to Hawaii, I think, at the beginning of next year, so I'll have to make sure that when I'm out there, if you're still there, we'll get a game on.
Oh, yeah, I'll be here till, I think, like May or April of next year.
Okay. Awesome. Well, very good. And if not, and if you end up back here in Tennessee, that's like Ohio, Tom's in Kentucky. I'm just saying, we're right there.
Oh, if you do come out here and you need to save money, you can stay with us. We have an extra room.
Fantastic. Accept it right now. No, you can't take it back. No. All right. Well, very good. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We certainly do appreciate it. Like if you like it, subscribe, and as always, see you next Wednesday.